Welcome on into the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. If you're not using the BetRivers app, what are you doing? Bet with me, Adam the Bull, on Tuesdays and Fridays on baseball parlays. You could bet on tennis, soccer, and a whole lot more. Football is right around the corner. Make sure you're using the BetRivers app. Coming up on today's podcast, one of my favorites, Greg Cosell of NFL Films. Nobody, and I mean nobody, does a better job of seeing the film and breaking it down than he does. Emotions out of it. What does he see? What are the facts? Will we get any surprises? Will we hear about breakout players? We'll talk Browns and a little AFC North with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. That's coming up next in the Bullpen with Adam the Bull.
You're watching Adam the Bull on the BetRivers Network.
All right, welcome back. It's the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, and it's brought to you, of course, by BetRivers. And joining me now, nobody on the planet, I was going to say in the country, but nobody in the planet does a better job of breaking down the film and leaving emotion out of it. He tells you what he sees, and that's what we all want. At least that's what I want. And it's the great Greg Cosell. I like that. You know, Greg, some fans want to be told what they want. You know, they want to hear what they want to hear. You know what I mean? They want the biases. They want the emotions. I want my analysis to be the reality, not what I want it to be. I mean, I'd like it to be what I want it to be, but if it doesn't turn out to be that case, be the case, I don't want it.
Adam, just before we start, it's funny you say that because, you know, obviously, a lot of people, you know, follow my work and they know who I am. And in fact, you're speaking to me on my 45th anniversary at NFL Films.
Wow. So congratulations.
I've been doing this for a few years, and I've been watching NFL tapes since, I think, 1991, and obviously have a lot of relationships with coaches as well. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of times I'll watch tape, I speak to coaches, and, you know, the tape is the tape. You know, on social media, we're all part of social media because we almost have to be now in this day and age. And I always love when people say to me, well, that's an interesting take. I don't do takes.
You don't?
I don't do takes. I do film. And, you know, 99.9% of the stuff that I say is always validated by when I talk to coaches. I mean, the film tells you the story. So, you know, so I always find that interesting, but it's funny you say that, and I appreciate it, but thank you.
No, it's true because fans have got, you know, everybody gets in their corners and everything in life now.
Oh,
They want to be told what they want to be told. And so I want to be told the truth. That's what I want. I think down deep, a good percentage of people want that too. So let's look at the tape. And the most fascinating guy on the Cleveland Browns is Deshaun Watson. Obviously, in Houston, he looked like he was becoming one of the best quarterbacks in the league. In Cleveland, he's been suspended. He's been hurt. And at least from my eyes, he hasn't played particularly well when he's been on the field. What do you see from Deshaun Watson in his limited time in Cleveland?
I mean, I have to be honest about this, Adam, because I don't think anybody knows. And anybody who says they know for sure, you can't know for sure. He hasn't played a lot of football in 3 years.
Yeah.
Now, granted, when he's played, except for a few flashes here and there, the tape has not been overly positive. But I would hate to use that as the defining feature simply because he's not played a lot of football.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's impossible to know. Now, you're correct. In his last couple of years in Houston, it looked like he was on his way to being a top 5 type quarterback in the league, the kind of quarterback that could beat you with consistency from the pocket, could play within structure at a high level, and yet had also that second reaction outside of structure ability to make those plays that really break down a defense. So that's where he was 3 years ago. But who can answer that right now? I mean, it's almost impossible to know. So, you know, we could go on and on about it, but, you know, one of the things I think I pride myself on is if I don't know something, I say it, and I don't really have a feel, and I know Cleveland fans might not love that answer, but in all honesty, I don't think anybody knows.
No, you say that they don't want that answer, but I think that's the truth. I mean, it is obvious. I've been saying for weeks, and I'm glad you kind of back up what I'm saying, is because some people, as I got people saying to me, oh, I think he's going to bounce back this year, or other people saying he's done. And I've consistently said, hey, I don't love what I've seen so far, but it's far too small a sample size to know either way. I don't know how you could be confident one way or the other that he's going to be good or not good. He just, you know, and And the more the years go by and the more injuries he has and the more time off, the harder it's going to be for him
the
to
one
turn it
advantage that the offense has, obviously, is the run game. Now,
Yeah.
let's assume Nick Chubb is back to being Nick Chubb, who's a
Right.
top 3 back in the league as a runner when healthy. And the O-line. I mean, they're 2 guards. That's as good a guard combination as there is in the league with Bitonio and Wyatt Teller. Wyatt Teller is as good a pulling guard as there is, and that's why the run game has evolved a bit more to have some more gap scheme runs where they use him as a puller as opposed to Stefanski, who obviously initially was a big, zone guy. But you have 2 really good guards. You've got 2 really solid tackles. I don't know if a lot of people talk about Jedrick Wills, but he's a top, I would say, without every team being on the top of my tip of my tongue right now, Adam, he's a top 5 or 6 left tackle in the league.
Really?
Yeah, and Conklin's just a really solid player. Just really a solid right tackle. So, this is a really good O-line, and they do have the run game to fall back on. Fall back's not the right word because Chubb is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So they do have an offense that can control the pace and tempo of games with the run game.
It's funny, Greg, and it's an example of the tape reality versus what we think, the perception. And I've been one of the main people here in Cleveland that's been critical of Jed Wills at left tackle. I'm with you on everything else he said. I've been critical. So when you see the tape, I'm not studying tape like you are. Maybe I need to do more of it.
Again,
what are you seeing with Jed Wills?
If we start running through tackles, obviously he's not Trent Williams or Laramie Tunsil.
Sure.
I'm just first getting back into the NFL.
Sure.
Adam, I've been actually watching a ton of college players who will be in next year's draft.
But even if it's top 15, doesn't even matter if it's top 5. Even
he's
15.
definitely in that group for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
He's a good player. Conklin, he's just really solid. Yeah. They've got a real good O-line. They can count on the run game to be a factor. And they've got, besides Chubb, Ford is a different kind of back, but he's a good back. They signed Deontay Foreman too, did they not?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so he's not as good as Chubb, but he's stylistically like Chubb.
Yes.
He's not the same level of quality.
Right.
And the big question now becomes the wide receiver position because, obviously, they traded for Jerry Jeudy, who I'll be the first to admit I love Jerry Jeudy coming out of Alabama, and it hasn't quite worked out. Although, when you watch the tape a year ago with Russell Wilson at quarterback, I can't tell you how many times Jeudy was wide open and the ball was never thrown to him. Again, then you have to figure out what was the reading progression and all that stuff, which sometimes you don't know for sure. 90% of the time I do know that, but you don't always know that.
Right.
So we'll see if Jeudy can become what I thought he could become coming out of Alabama. Cooper is solid and always has some big games. I think we would probably all struggle with him being one of those consistent guys that you're not going to – he's not a top 5 receiver in the league. If you were to list the top 5 receivers in the league, he wouldn't be in that category, but he certainly is a big-time talent.
Right.
And then who's the third wide receiver, the guy I really like and I'm curious to see this year is Cedric Tillman. I loved him coming out of Tennessee.
He showed some promise, but there was an issue in terms of route running last year. He was running the wrong routes a couple of times.
Not surprising because that Tennessee offense is pure air raid,
right.
And that, by NFL standards, that's really simplistic.
Right.
So he came into the league probably without any real understanding of route running.
Interesting. And that probably, year under professional coaching, maybe by this year that cleans up. I'm curious, Greg, David Njoku has been, a decent tight end for a number of years. He got off to his typical start last year. And then when Watson went down and Flacco came in, David Njoku played his best football with Joe Flacco. Is that a coincidence? Is there something to it?
I would say that, first of all, Njoku, as you know, Adam, is a very talented guy.
Yes.
But I think one of the things that stands out to me, and this is Joe Flacco, and obviously he'll throw a few picks because of it.
Yeah.
But Flacco always throws the ball. So, he understands in the NFL that there's tight window throws, whether it's versus zone or man, that have to be made. I'm trying to recall one play that just popped into my head. Was it against Houston? Did he catch about a 20-some-odd yard touchdown down the middle against Houston? Was it Houston, maybe?
I think you're right. I think you're right.
And that's the kind of throw that's an NFL throw. Not every quarterback's going to turn that ball loose.
Right.
So I think that helped Njoku because Flacco delivers the football. And as I said, it would get him in trouble on occasion. Joe's always been like that. He's always understood the NFL game and that you got to make throws. But Njoku's a really gifted guy. I mean, ever since he came out of college, you're dealing with a guy that is a higher level athlete for the position. Yep. You can detach him from the formation. He can line up anywhere. He gives you formation diversity and flexibility. So, he finally played to that level of talent. Of course, the hope is that continues.
Let's go to the defensive side of the ball, Greg, where Myles Garrett got his first Defensive Player of the Year award last year.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he is. But, the one thing I'll say, the one thing that always, obviously he's fantastic, but statistically, I know there's only one stat, but maybe the tape says better in December. For whatever reason, his sack totals in December kind of disappear. Is there anything to
but
that?
I think you have to look at it this way. I think you have to look at it from a game plan perspective. When offenses go against the Browns, they're game planning to make sure Garrett does not ruin their game.
Right.
And that's the way you have to look at it. Sacks, obviously, that's the statistic everybody looks at for an edge player. So if the sacks don't happen, people think a player plays poorly. And if the sacks happen, then they think they played great. I'll tell you a very quick story. I remember years ago, I interviewed Osi Umenyiora for a piece for NFL Films. And he had a game years ago where he had 3 sacks versus Walter Jones, arguably one of the best left tackles we've ever seen.
Yeah. And
Osi was, he had retired. I think he might have been retired by this point, or he was very late in his career. Yeah. And he said to me honestly, he said, you know what? There were 68 snaps in that game. I had 3 sacks. The other 65 plays, Jones totally dominated me. I was worthless. So, now fans are going to look at the 3 sacks, and they mean something. I'm not saying they don't mean anything.
Sure, I get it.
But so you have to be careful. It's more about how offenses game plan when they play the Browns. That's the critical issue.
Yeah.
Because you get to those third down situations, and how many left tackles in the league are there that an offensive coordinator or offensive line coach will feel really comfortable when it's 3rd and 8, one-on-one pass protection versus Myles Garrett?
Yeah. It's a
That's the way you got to think about it, not just the sack total.
That's fair. That's completely fair. And really, until recently, he's not played with particularly good talent around him. He had Zadarius Smith last year. He's back again this year. Where is his game at right now?
He's a good player too. He's don't forget they move people around.
Yep.
Schwartz, last year he'd move Garrett around. He moved Smith around. They've got some multiplicity with their defensive fronts. I'm curious to see where Alex Wright's career goes. He was not a Power 5 kid coming out of college, but he's got length and movement, flashes on occasion. I'm curious to see if he can continue progressing. I really like the Ohio State kid, Mike Hall, that they drafted in the 2nd round. Mm-hmm. He's an inside pass rusher, but he's got dynamic quickness and suddenness to his game. He can win one-on-one. He did in college. Now he's in the NFL. We'll see. But he's got those kinds of traits. I'm sure that's one reason that they drafted him, because that guy is going to get a lot of one-on-ones in pass rush situations. So I'm sure that's where they saw Hall as a really viable draft choice, because obviously the guys that are going to play in base defense, the Tomlinsons, the Harris, those guys, even a Quentin Jefferson who's been around the league, if he makes the team, those guys are not necessarily inside pass rushers.
Greg, at the linebacker level, JOK 2 years ago looked lost on the field, and then last year he looked like one of the best linebackers in football. Is this...
None of that's a surprise, Adam.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. Like, you're going to say what happened.
Yeah.
What happened is he learned the NFL game. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with a high level athlete who's probably lighter. Not probably, he's lighter than you ideally want, but he's a really great athlete. So he had to learn how to play NFL football. And he's always going to be lighter. So every once in a while, there are certain things you'll go, oh, he's not great at that.
Yeah.
But, when it comes to playing nickel defense and their sub defenses, he's going to be really good. And I think the signing of Jordan Hicks is a real good signing. He may not play in their sub, he may or may not. We don't know that as we speak right now. But he's just one of those really solid veterans. He'll continue to help JOK as well. and Hicks and their base will be really, really solid.
Let's wrap it up with the secondary here, Greg. Obviously Denzel Ward's been a really good corner in the league for a long time, although he does tend to miss a couple of games every year. Everybody here loves Martin Emerson Jr.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, and then Greg Newsome as well. As a whole, what's your breakdown of the corner?
I think it's a really good secondary. I mean, Emerson's long. He's athletic. I really like Emerson. I thought he had a really good season last year. And I think that, Schwartz is as you know, Adam, is a high percentage single high safety coach. So you have Thornhill, who's a good free safety, and then you got Delpit, who's outstanding closer to the line of scrimmage. That's his game. And I know he missed some time last year, but when healthy, he's a good run defender. He's a good blitzer. They can do a number of things with him. He's a smart, savvy player. He's a really good safety for what he is. And they use him properly. That's what he is. So I think the secondary is really solid.
I mean, there's really not much not to like about the Browns. If Deshaun Watson can get anywhere close to the play he played in Houston, it seems like this team is a Super Bowl contender.
I mean, you're right about that. And the issue, too, is because if Deshaun can be Deshaun, it also limits what defenses do in certain situations because then he can run. Because you look at the receivers and the immediate thought might be, well, play a lot of man coverage, see how they do. But then you get into those 3rd and 7th, 3rd and 8s, and you may not be real comfortable playing a lot of man coverage because of Watson's ability to leave the pocket. So, look, we know it's a quarterback's league. We know they have a great run game when Chubb's healthy. But obviously in this league, every coach you talk to talks about 3rd down. Every coach I talk to, let's say an offensive line coach, they say, well, you can't play tackle in this league unless you can pass protect one-on-one on 3rd and long. Because every coach wants to send 5 out at him on 3rd down. No coach wants to keep backs or tight ends in to pass protect on 3rd and 8. They want to send 5 out. So what does that mean? It means your tackles have to be able to pass protect one-on-one.
Yeah, and speaking of which, within the division, I mean, that's been one of the biggest issues for the Bengals, one of the Browns' competitors here, of course. On paper, it seems like they have the best offensive line they've ever had for Burrow. What do you see when you see their offensive line? Is it good enough?
I mean, I still don't think it's like, at a higher level O-line, and don't forget, Burrow is the kind of quarterback that can camouflage and compensate for O-line weakness or lack of strength. Let's put it that way. I still think it's probably would be viewed as more of an average O-line than anything else. The key question is can Burrow stay healthy? And at what point does that become an issue? Because as good as Burrow is, if you're constantly under duress, it's just hard really to execute your offense.
Yep. As for the Ravens, obviously Lamar had an MVP season last year. They lost a couple of key guys on defense. They lost, I believe, 3 starting offensive linemen. They add Derrick Henry. See how much he's got left in the tank. Do you think he's still got another great year in him?
I think the way he'll be deployed in the context of that offense, that he'll be fine. None of us are going to sit here and say, well, he's going to rush for, X number of yards.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he's going to get 380 carries. But
sure.
I think he'll be a factor in their offense because don't forget, Lamar changes the way defenses have to align. See, that's the thing, just like we talked about Myles Garrett and what how offenses have to play, defenses have to align a certain way, in normal down and distance type situations I'm talking about. Obviously, 3rd and long, everything is different, but it's like a few years ago when Jalen Hurts had the big year and the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. You watch the tape and you see that defenses have to do specific things because they want to make sure that they're in position to handle the run game that features the quarterback. So it's the same for the Ravens. You've got to align because you've got to make sure you account for the quarterback in the base run game. So Derrick Henry, I think, will be fine. Like I said, I don't think he's going to, it's not going to be like he was in Tennessee where he carried 380 times, but he'll be a factor in their offense for sure.
And last thing on the North, the Steelers quarterback situation. You mentioned Russell Wilson missing Jerry Jeudy a bunch of times. They've got Justin Fields there. What did you think of Justin Fields coming out of college, and do you still have any hope for him?
Yeah, sometimes in college it's tough to get a true read because you don't really know what they're asked to do from a reading progression standpoint, which is normally a lot less than what you see in the NFL. For instance, he obviously played in the same offense as C.J. Stroud, but C.J. Stroud showed things last year that he didn't have to show in college. So you don't necessarily know that he could do that. And he's now we know he can do that, but he didn't have to do that in college.
Yeah.
Fields obviously doesn't see the field as well as you need your quarterback to. His processing, or what I like to call elimination and isolation, is not at the level you really need. But the thing that strikes me, Adam, is they have gone real heavy with the O-line over the last couple of years, okay? 2 years ago, Broderick Jones, first-round pick. This year, first- and second-round picks were offensive linemen. So what does that tell you? That tells you that, and Mike Tomlin, we know, believes this. Right. That tells you they want to run the football, does it not?
Yep, 100%. That's their thing.
So, again, I'm not saying Justin Fields is a really good player, but it seems to me that if they want the run game to be sort of a decisive factor in how they play, and I think Mike Tomlin, we would all agree, wants to be a physical coach on both sides of the ball. He wants his team to look like that.
Yep.
Fields, because of what he gives you in the run game, just like we just spoke about Lamar,
right?
You wonder if he's the better choice. And I don't have any inside information, and I don't want people to think I'm saying Justin Fields is a great quarterback, but Justin Fields gives you that run game element by design with the quarterback that changes the way defenses have to play. So I'm just curious how all that's going to play out.
Yeah. The anniversary, 45 years. Nobody does it better, covering the film. And Greg Cosell. Greg, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Adam. Anytime. Appreciate it.
We'll take a quick break, come back, wrap things up in the bullpen next. Great chatting with Greg Cosell. That was I have been hard on Jed Wills, but the unemotional breaking down. Greg Cosell says Jed Wills is a top 15. He said top 5 at first, and we went to top 15. Top 15 left tackle. Listen, the man breaks down the film. He knows better than me. I'm going with him. I'm going to get off Jed Wills' back. Maybe the Browns were smart to pick up his 5th-year extension. Wow, that was the most eye-opening thing there. What he said about Deshaun Watson, certainly completely fair. We don't know yet. He said he was interested in see with Alex Wright. That's a guy I've picked to be the Browns' breakout player of the year on defense, so I liked hearing that. A lot of really interesting stuff, and Greg Cosell very high on the Browns' talent. It, as always, all comes down to Deshaun Watson. All right, I'm on vacation, so my next podcast won't be until next Wednesday. And so thanks, everybody, for joining me. Thanks for subscribing. Please subscribe if you haven't done so. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Greg Cosell. Thanks to Monzo for producing. Next podcast next week, 1 week from today, on Wednesday, the 31st of July. We dive deep into football season with the preseason right around the corner by the time I come back. Everybody be well. I'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by BetRivers. See you, everybody.